Good afternoon, folks. Hope you're all well. Time for some more, well, not hobby nightmares, more of a hobby opinion time. I used to do these quite a lot before we started delving into hobby nightmares so much, because I was inundated with hobby nightmares for the last few months. But I think now is the time to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit and start showing you a little bit more of what I think Warhammer 40,000 is going to look like going into the future. I've already done a video on this in the past, about 10th edition and where I think it should go. But I just wanted to do a quick update to that, to make sure that you all have a good notion of where I think the issues are in terms of Warhammer 40,000 and what we're going to be doing going forward. So, let me have a little sprucey here at my list. So, we've just had a rather big video from Chapter Master Valrak, who is one of my favourite YouTubers on the platform at the moment, where he is walking away from 9th edition simply because he doesn't find it fun anymore. And a lot of his thoughts kind of echoed my own, but I did have a few things to add on to his thoughts. So I will put his video downstairs in the description so you can have a little look and see for yourself how you think. But 8th edition, for me, is seen by many within the hobby, this is our last edition, as being the apex of Warhammer 40,000. Although, of course, there are those who have been in the hobby a long time who preferred older editions. That's always the case. I'm not just saying this because 8th edition is the edition that I sold mostly, but no, it literally was from a lot of people in the hobby that I was serving at the time. A lot of them were old-timers who were there for Rogue Trader, came out and said, you know, since 3rd or since, you know, whatever edition was their favourite, 8th was their favourite, you know? And that was a huge thing for me. To get the old-timers nod of approval, for the most part, was big. So, before I went into anything, what Valrak didn't do is that he didn't go into the past and show us what worked and why 8th worked. It was just more of an opinion piece, which is why I like his videos, to be honest with you. They're very nice and digestible. But I wanted to go into what 8th got right before I go into what 9th gets wrong. And then I'm going to talk about some Games Workshop business practices that I also think have hindered 9th. Okay, so let's jump into it, shall we? Let's do some griping. So 8th edition, what does it get right? Well, number one was a simplification of the rules that hits that sweet spot, for the most part, of easy to learn, difficult to master. 8th was a game you could pick up in an afternoon and have a decent game at and really understand what the hell was going on. You could even play against somebody who's been playing the game for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 years and still have a good game, even though you only picked the game up that afternoon if you did a bit of reading and you read the 3 pages of the core rules and you're ready to go, right? You could literally have a good game without using any of the special rules. The other person would have a marked advantage over you, probably, if he's using special rules, but it doesn't mean he's always going to win. The game was built in a more balanced way than what 9th is, and don't worry, I will get into specific examples later on in the video. Only 1 or 2 codexes in 8th were left behind. What I mean by that is they came out very early in the cycle of 8th, and as the codex creep started, which is another symptom of the Games Workshop business practice, which we'll get into later, when the codex creep started and codexes started getting more and more powerful, certain codexes were left behind in the dust. Grey Knights was one, and so ironically, if I tell you 8th edition is really good, you can probably trust what I'm saying, because Grey Knights were the pits in 8th edition, for the most part. We were one of the worst factions, literally one of the bottom 3 factions, but it was still one of the most enjoyable editions I've ever played of Warhammer. And yeah, we were only updated in like Psychic Awakening later on, as well as another few armies. Others, like Imperial Guard, though, were broken on release for how good they were, and then were slowly nerfed back down, sometimes into nothingness. Which is what happened to a friend of mine who plays Imperial Guard. He was loving it when they came out, and then he was expecting them to be nerfed, but they weren't just nerfed, they were just like, they were turf bombed underneath the carpet. And so, you know, and they were left behind by all of the big, nice, shiny things going on. Again, another model on Games Workshop's terrible business practices of the new thing always needs to sell, and so we're going to make it better than everything else in the game. This may seem bad, but a failure rate for codexes this low is actually a rarity in 40k edition releases. If you want an edition where every single release was broken when it came out, 6th and 7th are really good examples of those editions where codexes have come out and every single one is the new hotness and everybody needs to go and buy it if they want to be competitive in the game. I hated that, And 8th, whilst it was still there, really toned it down quite a lot. And it was a game that was built to not be able to be exploited in that way too much. The games in 8th edition were focused on narrative and being able to get through games relatively quickly. In fact, Horus Heresy 2.0 reminds me a lot of 8th edition, not in the way the rules are written, but in the way the game flows. It's a fair representation of a story of Warhammer 40,000 that's happening on the tabletop as we can see it in front of us, right? The simplification of toughness, eradication of templates, and bringing vehicles into line with other forces in terms of rules vastly helped in streamlining and improving the Games Workshop flagship product as a whole. And finally, what did 8th get right? The lore. And you know how much of a big lore legal beagle I am. A massive jump forwards in the lore for the first time in 30 years provided huge impetus for hobbyists to dive into 8th edition. And also, it lit a fire under a lot of staff at Games Workshop as well, I can tell you that much. So, what does 9th get wrong then? If that's what 8th got right, what does 9th get wrong? Well, in short, 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000 is a stuttering mess of a game. Stratagems have bloated and slowed the fast-paced action of 8th. Instead of being difficult to master, 9th plays as a game of gotchas, as each player seemingly pulls out an endless stream of stratagems, special rules, and interrupts out of their backsides to outdo the other. The turn is no longer sacrosanct in 9th edition. You can no longer simply enjoy your turn, but instead come across players who use stratagems and other rules to invade your turn at every single opportunity. Doing combat in your turn, shooting out of phase, and even moving entire units whilst you are attempting to finish your turn. This destroys the flow of the game and grinds it to a halt as rules are checked and rechecked and rechecked and rechecked, because quite frankly, none of us can believe that some of these rules actually exist when they do, such as their ridiculousness, right? It's a real shame, and I cannot believe that this got past playtesting, that they weren't playing 9th edition and going, wow, this is a lot slower than 8th, what's going on here? No, they just released it anyway. They just released it anyway, and, you know screw the players, they can just deal with it. Number 3, a lot of codexes in 9th edition have been full to the brim of confusing counters and specific combinations that make the army competitive. That's terrible, right? I almost said Gay Knight player then. Shut up. As a Grey Knight player, there are 1 to 2 combinations, mainly the same units, just in different numbers, in the codex that make the Grey Knights competitive. Take one of these 2 army lists, basically, or die against a mildly competitive army from any other codex. That is not game balance. That is not game balance. That is Games Workshop pushing you to buy certain units and interactions from the codex. I'm going to take a drink of water because my voice nearly went there. Still not quite over my cold, sorry. So yeah, for me, that is not game balance. And from what I understand, a lot of other armies are also like this. A lot of other armies are, if you are playing a mildly competitive player, you must take one of these 2 combinations from your codex or be tabled at the top of turn 2. Right? That's it. That's all you can do. And finally, the lore has shuddered to a halt, much like the game. We are back to a stalemate in the lore of Chaos not doing very much under Abaddon, and the Imperium barely holding on for no reason in particular. Promised big events like the return of the Lion, the emergence of Angron, or the resurgence of Rogel Dawn have either failed to make an impact or failed to turn up entirely. These things that have been teased for years that we thought were coming in 9th have not turned up. Or they have turned up, and it's been with a whimper. Even the bloody squats have come out, and no one's bothered because your game fucking sucks. It doesn't matter if you give us squats, if your game we're playing them in sucks balls. Okay. Games Workshop business practices. Here we go. Here's what I think is the main cause of most of these symptoms. Games Workshop is woefully behind the rest of the industry when it comes to rules and materials needed to play. Needed to just pick up and play. Warhammer Plus, in my opinion, is the perfect place to get all of your codexes and rules in PDF form for free if you sign up to it. This will drive the service to be wildly popular and forge a lot of goodwill within the community. And all those things, Games Workshop, that you're spending money on, all the things that people would like to see, but we're not paying you money for this service because you got rid of Brother Alpha Booster and we hate you for it. Well, now we would come over to Warhammer Plus. Now we would give you your money because we're getting these things that used to cost us £35 per pop for £5 a month. You will make more in the long term and less in the short term. But Games Workshop is a very, very, from what I can see, short-term looking company. They want all of the money and they want it now. They want it now, they want it yesterday. They don't want it in the future, they want it now. That is a bad business model. Anybody can tell you that. If you want a company full of goodwill, you plan for the future, you make sure that your customers are giving you money on a reliable basis. Even if it's just £2 here, £3 there. As long as you're getting something per month. Look at Netflix. Look at people like that, right? They don't charge you an arm and a leg. Well, they do nowadays. But what built their entire catalogue of shows was that £5, £6 a month model that they used to have. So cheap. You could just go on there, get all of the stuff that you want, and it's in one place. And lo and behold, look how much they're worth. Moving on. Games Workshop just posted a profit of over £60 million. That is almost unheard of in an industry like this outside of massive video game publishers. They can afford to throw a bone such as this to the long-drained community of theirs and still make a lot of money. So those of you who are saying, well, they've got to make money somehow, well, yeah, they'll still make a lot of money. And maybe even more if it takes off. If that idea takes off. Number 3. Codex creep is, and has always been, a big issue for Games Workshop. Codex creep is cancer and I hate it. We have seen games like Kings of War show the way on this by releasing all of the rules for all of their armies at once in PDF format, and they update all of their armies and core rules together. Not one person gets preferential treatment, not one army gets preferential treatment. It all comes out together because it's all equally cool. And it allows us to establish a nice balance in the game going forwards. GW have the staff to do this in studio, and if they don't, hire more. You have the money and resources to do that with plenty to spare. Right, so what do I think 10th edition should be going forwards? Let's pull all that together. How would that actually, enough moaning, how would I actually change it? 10th edition should be a massive reset and a pulling back of the rules to 8th edition. Each army should have 4 to 5 stratagems per book, at most. And there should be 3 to 4 stratagems that any army can use in the core rules. That's it. There should also be a marked limit on how many stratagems you can use per turn. Right now it's per phase, I think. It should be per turn. It should be 1 or 2 per turn. That's it. The lore should advance more, as in the story, should advance more, showing how the galaxy is changing. Big events need to begin happening. Finally, Warhammer Plus should be made the place to get your codexes cheaply for your £5 a month Netflix-like subscription to Warhammer Plus. All these rules and codexes should be out day one, together, play-tested and ready to go. They won't do any of this, but their business practices at the moment are a huge reason for a downturn in player retention in 9th edition. Alright, those are my thoughts on what I think 9th edition is doing wrong, what I think 8th edition did right, and how I think Games Workshop's own business practices are feeding into the bad habits that is killing our hobby. If you can drive somebody like Valrak away, you got some issues. What do you guys think? Show me in the comments below. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one.